Welcome back to Stacks. This is the show for crypto investors, trends, trades, news. It's all going down right here. And today I'm joined by Punk 9059, the best NFT statistics in the game. Dude, when I stumbled across your account, I don't know, 6 months ago now, maybe it's been longer, a couple thousand followers. I think it's ballooned up to 50,000 or more followers because you have the best NFT statistics out there. Thank you so much for coming on the show, man.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
How did you run into this opportunity? Because now I've seen your account. Now I follow you. Every single day I kind of check your page to see what's happening in the NFT world. But before you, I don't know what I was doing. Like, I guess sometimes I would check OpenSea, sometimes you check Nansen. How did you stumble into being the guy for what's happening in the NFT world?
Yeah, so I bought my first CryptoPunk about a year ago. And I think when I was buying it, I saw that you had this pretty big asset class. Like, even at the time, it was already over $1 billion asset class. If you look at kind of where the floor was trading in US dollar terms. And I couldn't find a floor price chart anywhere. And I very quickly, like getting in NFTs, I realized that floor price was a pretty important attribute for a set. And you couldn't even find a very basic, like, historical chart. I'm not even talking analysis. I'm just talking like, what were the numbers over the past 3 months? It didn't exist. Or if it did exist, I couldn't find it.
Right.
So I just started building it out myself. And that was where it started. I started just recording, punk stats every day. I'd put them in a Google Doc, and then, a few months later, I bought an ape and started becoming a little bit more just kind of into NFTs across the board, and just kind of expanded the analysis out further and further. And it was amazing. Like, I was tweeting little things like, today the punk floor went up 1 ETH, and people were reading it. And I was like, this is so basic, and people were reading it. So if that was simple, like, kind of getting into a little bit more in-depth analysis, like, nothing I do is that crazy, but a little bit more, like, there just aren't a lot of people out there doing it. So it just, I think the account just kind of a few months ago really started to take off. It went from like 10,000 to 30,000 followers in a month after taking 4 or 5 months to get to 10,000.
That's crazy. It's funny how that works. Something that seems so simple, like whether it's a new business idea or a new account on Twitter or some new resource, it's like something as simple as just updating where all the floors were, what moved the most, what NFTs are performing best. Everyone's like, how did we live without that? Everyone wants that.
I mean, it's crazy. OpenSea doesn't even have that chart. Magic Eden does for Sol, but if you look at OpenSea, they don't even have a chart that says historic floor prices. And the problem is, if you don't have historic floor prices, all you have is like volume data, which is doesn't really correspond with price.
Right.
You can look at things like average price of trades, but grails and expensive NFTs can offset that and make that a weird metric. So if you don't have floor price data, then you can't run other analysis, like what makes prices go up, or are NFTs correlated with each other, or are they momentum assets, or what information can I learn based on how prices moved yesterday for how they're going to move today? Like, all those questions aren't really complex questions, but because no one even has that basic data, that no one can run them. So for me, like those derivative analyses of like, what more can we learn now that we have the prices? Like, that's been what's really caught a lot of people's attention. Looking at like indexes, so how have like large cap NFTs worked as a group? How have anime NFTs as a group worked? Like, you can start doing those analyses, but you need to have the numbers first. And it just wasn't out there. It still is really hard to get.
Yep. For me, it was such an easy follow because I'm just not someone who looks at a piece of art. There are guys out there that can look at an art or look at a vibe. Deez is one of those people, pretty big NFT collector, and he'll just understand if the project has the right vibe and he buys. For me, I want to see the analysis you're doing. I want to see if this is correlated. I want to see what days it goes up and how big those up days are. So it's been super, super valuable. I appreciate it. You just had a chart this week or yesterday. It seems like it pissed some people off. You said that NFT volumes were dropping. They collapsed. And a lot of people quote tweeted it. Maybe they misinterpreted you. They said NFTs are dead. Is that out of line to say NFTs are dead? What's happening with the volume? Like, how down bad is it?
I don't think that was really the right take. Like, for people to say NFTs are dead. I mean, it's definitely been a low volume period, but when I think of NFTs, I think you have like Bored Apes, Azukis, CloneX, Moonbirds, Doodles, Punks. You have a few sets that have kind of established themselves, as much as you can over a 3 to 6 month period as kind of having a little bit more longevity. And I was just looking kind of at my daily screens and saw that all those sets did basically no volume on it. So, when I see anything that's like an outlier, I'll tweet it. It didn't mean that OpenSea volume was completely gone. Like, you had some kind of more degen plays like lower ETH plays that did a bit more volume. Like the overall kind of market wasn't down that bad, but the big sets did their like lowest volume day of the year by like 50%. And I was like, oh, that's kind of a weird stat. You know, punks did no trades for the first time since November. So I tweeted it. And, you know, a lot of times I'll tweet charts and they'll get like 20 likes and that'll be that. And then, you know, something like yesterday got a little bit more virality. I think it seemed to resonate with what people were feeling. So, you know, I wouldn't sugarcoat it and say that the market's definitely slow. There's no question about that. But this was just a really weird Saturday where like the big sets did no volume. So I tweeted that and yeah, I got like over 1,000 likes and a bunch of retweets and a lot of bad takes, which I wrote a thread today just kind of addressing a lot of the takes people have.
Twitter's great for that. Bad takes. Just angry comments, bad takes. I absolutely love it. I'm in there every single day. I just reading them all. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it's especially true with NFTs because people are so tribal. Like people are so well, both like identity-wise, but also financially. People are so invested in these things.
Yeah.
That I find if I tweet something that's neutral, it doesn't have to be like negative. Just like, here's a stat that kind of is neither here nor there. Like I'll have at least 5 people come after me.
Oh yeah.
You know, so it just is something you just get used to when you're kind of tweeting about NFTs.
Yeah, I kind of enjoy riling up the crowd a little bit. So I enjoyed that tweet. I don't want to see NFT volumes down, but it is what it is. Just an off Saturday. So volumes dropping off a little bit. What is working best? You track a lot of floor prices every single day. You show the changes. You've also had some tweets on metas that were working. Like, is there a meta right now that you're seeing work well? Is there a type of NFT or a theme? Like for a while, it was high-end collectibles were kind of the only things grinding up, while all the anything, you know, priced at 1 ETH or below was grinding lower. Like, what's happening right now? Is there any trade working in the NFT world?
Right now, there's not a whole lot that I'd say that actually I would say a couple of things. One is CryptoPunks and art blocks. So you mentioned D's, but if you look at like the NFTs that really came onto the scene in the earlier half of 2021, obviously punks had been around a lot longer, but they really started to have their moment then. Mm-hmm. You know, art blocks kind of came to the scene then. Those were really out of fashion for most of the year because Bored Apes were like all the hype, and it wasn't just Bored Apes, but it was everyone else who wanted to do something that was similar to Bored Apes and be the next Bored Apes. So all these like utility tokens with airdrops started pumping, and I think the market right now is just kind of tired of that or losing a little bit of that enthusiasm. And as that fell, art blocks have done like really, really well. If you look at Gazers or Chromie Squiggles or Fidenzas, you know, those floor prices, you know, are up substantially year to date. Punks have had a bit of a moment, you know, like I said, they did 0 trades on Saturday, but they had one of their biggest weeks kind of the past year, the week before. So you're seeing a little bit of kind of the old school stuff come back. The other big theme is these free mints, and I'm not that into that theme, but I do think goblins were certainly the one success story kind of from a culture standpoint of the summer. Now that was really big about a month and a half ago. But it's been rough. I mean, you haven't really seen a ton of upward movement in floor prices aside from a couple projects here and there. Like I said, some of those old school things, a couple interesting things happening, but it's certainly not been a market where like there have been all that many ways to make a lot of money.
Right. It's like two very opposite ends of the spectrum. You have the high end, well, punk buyers and generative art buyers are probably just less like they have money. They're probably doing well anyways if their profile picture's worth a couple $100,000. So they're a little bit less worried about the bear market. And then on the other end, you have things like Goblin Town, which were the free mints, and it spawned, 10 more of those types of projects doing well because if anyone's going to buy a new mint, it's going to be free. So there's like free projects are doing well and the ultra expensive things are doing well. Everything in the middle is kind of washed out.
Totally. Yeah. And I think like you had like a CloneX, like CloneX and Moonbirds are two of kind of like the top 5-6 sets. And they both had airdrops this past week that disappointed a little bit. Airdrops, like Moonbirds had oddities, which they gave everyone for free, and it did quite well before reveal. But as things go post reveal, it went from like 3.5 to 1.5 ETH.
Right.
So that type of thing can deflate the market a little bit. CloneX had a drop for a hoodie. I think it was both an online hoodie as well as a physical one you could get, and they only dropped 8,000 for 20,000 people, and the line was really long to get it, and a lot of people who spent a lot of money on clones didn't get it. So I think you had like some of these kind of consistent success stories disappoint the market a little bit.
Yeah.
It's just led to a lot of stuff feeling a little bit more downbeat.
Makes sense. Makes sense. One of my favorite pieces of alpha that you've put out, and you alluded to this earlier, is how NFT floor prices move. And it relates really well to what we were just talking about. Based on the way the market is right now, there's probably some NFT holders that are sitting there watching their collection slowly go lower every single day. And then there's another camp of NFT investors that are sitting and watching prices go down and say, man, if they get any lower, I'm probably going to buy, right? So you're either holding it, it's going down, or you think you can now buy this dip. You did a really in-depth, a nice step-by-step study on how floor prices move and how momentum plays a role. Can you kind of explain that? Like what's the deal with momentum? Why is that such an important factor for floor prices? How can that help people?
Well, it's just one of the things I noticed looking, like, one thing that just as someone who looked at prices every day, I started noticing, like, I kind of woke up every morning and I knew that punks would be down. And how did I know? It's basically what they did yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about these prices that they really just kind of have these trends where once a trend starts kicking in, it takes a long time for it to play out. So I started running the numbers and I found that actually this wasn't just a feeling I got when I woke up in the morning. Punks, if they were down yesterday, if the floor price went down, there was only a 32% chance over the past year that it was going to go up today. It was something like a 66% chance that it would go down. So just based on yesterday's price, you could actually get a good feel for what would happen today. And the same thing was true on the opposite side. Like pretty much every single set I looked at was much more likely to go up based on the way that if the floor price had moved up yesterday. And it just speaks to what these are, which is they're just deeply momentum assets. There's a lot of FOMO involved. Like this, you buy because you think you won't be able to buy tomorrow for the price you can buy today. That's what happens when a lot of people are buying. I think the takeaway from a trading perspective, though, is I rarely like to buy stuff going down. I think in stock markets, a lot of times there's like a temptation to buy like stuff that's cheap. And I think that tends to be a decent strategy. But with NFTs, like normally if you wait for the market to reverse, you'll be okay. It's very rare the situation where like you've got to get in as things are going down, because then like if you just miss it, it's going to go up 50% the next day, like whenever it decides it's too cheap. Like that's just like rarely the case. So my view is wait for things to start to move up a little bit before you start putting your money to work. Because as markets are going down, that means there are a lot of sellers who want to get out.
Yep.
And a lot of times they're not going to list. A lot of people don't like to undercut the floor. It's kind of bad for everybody when you do that, but that they still want to get out. They're still feeling that. So I think like when prices are going down, it's just generally not the time to like start swinging the bet.
Yep. I like that. It's counterintuitive too, because I think people in crypto have been trained to, when their favorite altcoin is down, or with Bitcoin, DCA is a bit of a religion. That's like, everyone knows DCA prices are going down. It's a good time to buy. With NFTs, it's likely kind of the opposite. I'm sure there's some people that argue, you can have your strategy, you want to buy when things are down, but if you're trading them, momentum is kind of king here.
For sure. And the other thing is like, if you believe in the long-term story for an NFT project, then take advantage of weakness and shut your eyes and, don't worry if it's going to go down more over the next week. Like if it, I think a lot of times though, I think one of the big issues is we're still figuring out what makes NFTs work over the long term. So like with crypto, like there are a lot of people who just believe in Bitcoin. Like DCA is like a great strategy. If this is something that you're very comfortable owning and you want to own for 10 years, then as things are going down, do that. Yep. I think with NFTs, people are still figuring out like what is actually going to be around in 10 years, and like if you think something will be like CryptoPunks, or some people are religious about Bored Apes or whatever you're religious about, then kind of taking swigs when it's going down can work. But broadly speaking, it has not been a very good strategy.
You had another piece in that same thread. This chart kind of further reinforced that point, that the size of the up days is so much larger on average than the down days that it really points to, when things reverse, hopefully, buying going up is going to help you, because those up days, even if they're fewer, are just so much bigger than the down day that's more likely.
Yeah, this was like a crazy realization. So Doodles minted, I think, at 1 ETH. And when I wrote this thread, like when Doodles were at 16 ETH, they were up like something 16x over 6 months, like just an insane return. And at least in ETH terms, I think that was when ETH was higher too.
Yeah.
And then I looked at my like floor history, and I saw even though it was up 16x, Doodles had actually gone down more days than they'd gone up.
It's crazy.
Which is just a crazy. The problem when they went up like double as much per day as when they went down. So It does speak a little bit to this thing that, like, in the absence of catalysts, in the absence of news, NFTs often just trend lower. That's kind of like the like steady state for NFTs is kind of this thing where they're trending lower. When they pump, like, then you would get like just massive up days that make up for all the down days. Like, that's been kind of the trend over the past year, certainly in like Bored Apes, Doodles, a lot of the sets that have done really well. Obviously the question is like, are you at risk of missing it if you don't buy the down days?
Sure.
And I've really tried to dig into that a little bit. And I've generally found like the pumps tend to come after you get a little bit of stabilization. Like it's not super frequent that it's like down 10 days in a row and then it's like boom up 2x. Normally you get a little bit of stabilization ahead of time. And I generally just say like, okay, that can be like the time you want to start buying. But very few of like the best traders I know are out there buying stuff that has low volume and is trending.
I got you. How does ETH affect this? ETH going up, does that help NFT prices generally, or does ETH going down? Because ETH's now up like 50% in the past 30 days. A lot of people are looking at ETH leading higher all the way until the merge. And like my initial gut guess would be, ETH going up, people would rather hold their ETH, NFT collection go down, but I think you've actually found the opposite.
Yeah, if you look at the end of 2021, so like last fall and winter, you did have a slight trend there where higher ETH was kind of like not great for NFT ETH prices, but it was really muted. I think this was more just kind of like a myth that people had based on feel that like higher ETH is people are thinking about in US dollar terms. This year, for sure, it's been a total myth. Like, there have been times like in more stable times where maybe there was something there, but this year, like ETH up has categorically been good for NFTs and ETH down has been bad for NFTs. And I think a lot of that is because this year, like the macro economy and like the stock market have really performed poorly. And when ETH goes down, that tends to mean that the market's going down and people are like, get me into cash, get me out of my JPEGs.
Right.
Like, I just need some security so I can like keep, paying my family bills. So that tends to be like bad for ETH, bad for NFTs. When ETH rallies, it tends to be like, okay, like we can relax again. I can go back to having fun collecting JPEGs. So like that's been the broad kind of mentality, I think, of investors this year. And that's 100% played out in the numbers. My pinned tweet, the first tweet, I think goes into this. That said, I haven't looked at how the past couple of weeks have been because you have had this rally from ETH from 1,000 to 1,500. And it hasn't really felt like NFTs have ridden that wave. Maybe it's because, I don't know. I need to dig into those stats. I haven't really run it over the past week or two. And it doesn't feel like NFTs have been as strong. But that said, like, I tweeted this today, like we did crash about a month and a half ago. We're still well above where that crash went to. Like Bored Apes went down to 77. Now we're in the high 80s, low 90s. So, and my guess is that the trend still broadly holds. But yeah, it's if you look kind of at a big picture, you've definitely seen higher ETH prices be good for NFTs, certainly in 2022.
Yeah, it's a good myth to dispel. I think if you ask the average person, just ask 10 people on CT, when ETH going up, are your punks going to be higher in ETH? Like it may be mixed response. I think most people would probably get that wrong. I'm really curious if you run the data over the past couple of weeks, if it's still holding up.
Yeah, I'll have a look. I'll tweet that out so you guys can all, if anyone who's listening, you can hopefully I've tweeted it by the time you hear this. I think a lot of time people want to protect their bag, and it's not just protect their bag. They want to protect like their mindset when they talk to their like husband or wife or kids about how they're doing, and if like NFTs are crashing, but ETH is up, I'm like, oh, ETH is up. It's just bad for NFTs. It's kind of like an out for a community that normally measures their NFT prices in ETH in the first place. But yeah. Like there's a lot of stories we tell ourselves because it is kind of a crazy experience investing in this stuff.
That's the truth. That is the truth. I guess it's a bit sad that macro is now touching everything. As you said, it's probably a little bit of macro's fault for NFTs doing bad when ETH is down.
Yeah, I mean, look, like at the end of the day, even though we love living online and like I think there is like we still need to buy food, we still want to live in a nice house. Like there are just factors that you just can't get away from unless there probably are some personalities in this space who like live in a van somewhere or like have moved off the grid or live in a basement and that's just the way they love it and eat ramen all day. Like, I don't know. But my sense is that when push comes to shove, most people like you got families to feed. And, I think macro when you have so much money tied up in NFTs, like macro can have an impact on a lot of people. And I actually did a survey of my followers, and more than half are over 30 years old. I think there's this kind of perception of NFT investors as like, and crypto people in general as like really young people who kind of hit it out of the park and bought Bitcoin in 2012 or 2013. They dropped out of college and are now investing that money. And I've at least found and it could be me. I'm older. I'm 40 years old myself. So maybe the way I talk just brings in like an older follower base. But I also think realistically, most people who are looking at punks and apes, like just to have, you need a little bit of career under your belt to be able to afford it, And I think part of it is that the 17-year-old who owns 7 apes, like we just love writing stories about them because it's a super interesting story. So people see that and think, whoa, everyone's 17. In my survey, only 3% of my followers were 18.
That's interesting. That is interesting. I wouldn't have guessed it. Would not have guessed it. All right, Punk. This has been Punk 9059. This has been an incredible little NFT market summary, dude. I appreciate the update. Before you go, I do want to ask you, there's got to be one chart you're eyeing right now that maybe you haven't released yet, or is there any like trade or development or just theme you're seeing in the NFT market that has your mind working? You have this data set in front of you. You're always giving updates, but what's like the one thing that has your mind turning on where NFTs go next? Is there any trade right now that excites you?
Wow, that's a really good question. Normally when I have stuff on my mind, I tweet about it pretty quickly. So I would say like, go look. I don't want to have no great answer for you on this. I think, one thing that I do think, and this is like the thing that's kind of on my mind in particular, is a question is, can NFTs are so much about brand and so much about FOMO and hype and like this kind of get on the train mentality that I started to worry that NFTs that go down would never recover. And I am really excited that punks are actually kind of having a rebound here. Like, they went from 120 to under 50.
Oh yeah.
And then they just bounced back up to 85, and the whole market kind of got excited about punks again. So for me, like that was a huge thing. Like the fact that that's happening right now, that this set that this historic kind of significance it had, like it just was so irrelevant for so much of the year when apes and doodles and other things were getting the light. So it does like seeing, like, I am like excited about punks now in a way that I haven't been. It's like, maybe I can give one of these to my kids and it'll really be good for their financial situation. Whereas I did start to worry about that for a while. So that's like one thing that I'm kind of excited about. It's not like hidden alpha for your followers. I apologize for that.
No, that's fine.
There are other people who are better to follow than me when it comes to like, what's the trade that's going to make you a lot of money over the next week or two. The other thing I'd say that is like, clearly there's interest in this coda trend,
Oh yeah.
Just complete uncertainty over what Otherdeed is going to start doing and are they going to make money for people. I've personally stayed out of that trade a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like one of the stories that's on deck a bit. Kevin Rose and Proof have talked about the metaverse that they're building. And I think that there's a lot of kind of intrigue about that, but it's not front of mind right now. So there are some things that are going on out there that I think are pretty cool. But we'll have to wait and see.
I can appreciate that. I'm bullish on the punks as well. I do think they'll flip in apes again. I'm just a little bit skeptical on a lot of the metaverse. I thought it was exciting what the apes were able to do with their metaverse demo and having people jump into that environment and see the codas and see the land. But I don't know. I just still think a lot of that stuff is so far away. I'm happy to be proven wrong though, man. Like I just like to watch this stuff. It's fascinating to me. I am bullish punks though.
I'm with you on that. It's crazy to me, Otherdeed has 200,000 plots. They've released 100,000. Every week, they're just like 60 or 70,000 users on OpenSea. So the amount of supply of this stuff relative to the amount of active traders is just so massive.
Yep.
That it'll be a huge accomplishment if they find ways to like really turn this stuff into exciting, interesting assets.
Yeah.
So kind of sit around and wait as we do in this space, and a lot can change in 6 months. So I'm really curious to see how it all plays out.
That is true. Well, I appreciate you coming on, man. This is great. I think I've been trying to do this for a couple weeks. Glad I could finally lock you down. I appreciate all the updates. And for anyone listening on iTunes or Spotify, if you do want the updates every single day, I cannot recommend it highly enough. It is Punk 9059. If you just search NFT statistics on Twitter, he makes it pretty simple for you. That is literally his name. Search it. You'll thank me later. For everyone watching, thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks for coming on, man. This is fun. Appreciate all the updates.
Thank you. Yeah, and I echo all those thoughts, man. Following your account and kind of, there have been a couple times where you've retweeted stuff, and that really kind of set me off. So I really appreciate your support as well.
Of course, dude. Have a good rest of the week, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.